Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's episode I will be installing or making a wardrobe. This is week 2 and I'm doing the cupboard or the built-in wardrobe. The previous week, the first week, which was last week, I had to take off all the plaster, or it's called Lath and plaster, which is basically these very thin timber strips which they attach to the studs, plaster over that. I think the Americans might still do it. And I'm basing that solely on a movie I've seen with Kevin Costner and Ben Affleck. I insulated the walls, then plasterboarded over that, and that's now ready for the plasterer to come in this week and do it. So at this point I've built the carcasses and I've built the base for the cupboard to sit on. This was my first on-site YouTube video, probably not the best one to start with. There was a lot of people everywhere, a lot of noise, and not much space. But I wanted to film the first week where I was doing the walls, but to be honest, the amount of dust it made, to give you an idea, there was like 25 bags of rubble that I had to take down. It was just too dusty for my camera and my equipment. But getting back to this cupboard or wardrobe, I've had everything cut at our local box store. I've used 18 mil MDF, which is nice and thick, and I've had it all cut to size. And like you saw in the beginning of the video, I primed everything at my workshop, or almost everything. There was a few pieces I had to cut on site here, and you could tell by the brown versus the white. I opted for a 9 mil backing for this. It wasn't much cheaper than the 18 mil ply. You would think it would be half the price because it's half the thickness, but it wasn't. Some cupboards, I believe, have that 3 mil hardboard, but it's very flexible. It seems very weak. This was nice and rigid. And here I'm just using my profile upcut bit, which I've had for a while. I really enjoy using it. It really cuts through that MDF quite quickly. I must have used about 4 8x4 sheets of MDF for this cupboard. I thought it'd be a nice touch to put an end panel on where it's facing the door. And here I'm just attaching it behind the hinge plates. Now for the hinge plates, I've used a 110 on the right and a 165 degree on the left, only because on the left, you kind of stuck into the corner there. There's not much room to move. So I thought I'd see if I could get that door open nice and as wide as possible. The 35mm jig. Oh, hello. I use this guide for drilling my hinges. I've probably had this for about 2 years. I've never used it, so I was quite excited to use it. And it just basically, it's got a little shelf there. You can see it's got a little sort of stopper there. You just offer that up to the side of your door, and then you just clamp that on. All right. Once he hits that stopper, you clamp him up, and then you put your drill on there. You drill him down, and you've got two little markers there for your hinge plate. There's a couple of screws in there, so those two will end up with your hole. I bought this on AliExpress, and that was about 2 years ago. I was pretty excited to use it for this, but I mean, you can probably get these on AliExpress, Temu, and Wish, and whatever other Chinese websites there are. Or you can probably get it on Amazon or eBay and pay a bit more, but generally it's from China. It's a nice solid piece of equipment, eh? But once again, there's a bit of faffing around with it and stuff like that. But I tend to find these quite useful, and they're cheap as chips. And I ended up using this. It's got your markings on it. And it's going to let you know where all your holes are going to be. And you'll just basically put them at the end. You can choose which hinge you want. You get two types of hinges. This particular hinge is a 35, and I believe the other one's a 26. For instance, the 35, you'll use that'll be your center hole there, and those don't change. Those will still be your screw holes. I don't know if he's actually practical, because what this big clunky thing does, which takes a little while to set up, because you've got to get your depth right. With each hinge, you've got to get that in, because he wants to fall out. There's a pin there right at the top, which will guide you if you're in the right place, because you can't really see it. So if you've got a line on your workpiece, you can put him in, drop him in, clamp that on. The only purpose he serves is that you can clamp him down and work hands free, I guess. The good thing about a Forstner bit is you've got that little pin there, you've got that little marker, so you know he's not gonna drift. Bit clunky and not that cheap. And then obviously you've got these little guys. You just basically mark it out and you're ready to go. And like I said, because your Forstner bit has got a kind of a point on the end, it will stop it from drifting anyway, which is what I think that jig is supposed to do. And interestingly, these marks on here, on the Forstner bit, was sort of pretty much the right depth for my hinge. So as you can see, I'm finishing up, and I did use a Zinza primer for the MDF, and it was twice the price of my usual primer. I'm not sure if it was actually worth it, but I finished off with an eggshell satin, which looked very nice. The customer was happy. I think the only real issue I had was that top infill panel. Trying to get the shape of the ceiling and the cupboard wardrobe at the same time was a bit of a nightmare. Now I've just got to wait for the plasterer to come in and plaster, and the carpet guys to finish the carpet, and I can finish off, and then I'll put in 2 hanging rails and I'll be done.